Welcome back, everybody. In the first video, I introduced Origin and talked about why I've been developing it. At the center of Origin are three ideas. I call them the three pillars. The first is virtue, the second is rationality, and the third is intentionality. I touched on each of them briefly in the first video, so if you need more information, click back to that one. But today I want to slow down and talk about what each of these ideas actually means, why I chose them, and most importantly, why I think we need all three. Because none of these pillars is sufficient by itself. They need each other. So let's start with the first pillar. Let's talk about virtue. What do I mean by virtue? The word can sound a bit old-fashioned. It might make you think of ancient philosophers or religious morality, but the basic idea is actually pretty simple. Character matters. What kind of person are you? How do you treat other people? What principles govern your behavior when no one but you is watching? What do you do when doing the right thing becomes difficult? Origin begins with the proposition that it matters whether we become good people. And that's important because intelligence alone doesn't make us good. Success doesn't make us good. Power doesn't make us good. A person can be extraordinarily intelligent and use that intelligence destructively. A person can be enormously successful while leaving misery in their wake wherever they go. And a civilization can become extraordinarily powerful without becoming particularly wise. So ability isn't enough. We need some conception of what our abilities should be used for. As a starting point, Origin draws from something humanity has been thinking about for a very long time, the four cardinal virtues. They are wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Let's take these one at a time because that can be kind of confusing. Wisdom is the ability to exercise good judgment. It's more than simply possessing information. You can know an enormous number of facts and still make terrible, absolutely abysmal decisions. Wisdom is about understanding perspective, judgment, and knowing how to apply what you know. Then there's courage. Courage is our ability to confront fear, difficult uncertainty, and adversity without immediately surrendering to them. Courage matters because knowing what is right doesn't mean very much if you're unwilling to do it when doing it becomes difficult. Then there's justice. Justice concerns how we treat other people. It asks what we owe one another. It asks whether we're being fair, whether we're considering interests other than our own, whether we're treating other human beings as people rather than simply as obstacles or tools. And then there's temperance. Temperance is self-command. Human beings have desires. We have impulses. We become angry. We become afraid. We want things. None of that makes us bad. It simply makes us human. But a person who is governed entirely by passing desire or emotion isn't really governing their own life. Temperance is the ability to experience an impulse and still say, I decide what I do next. These four virtues are ancient. Origin did not invent them. And that is intentional. Origin isn't about throwing away thousands of years of human thought simply because these ideas came before us. If humanity has discovered something valuable, we should inherit it. We should examine it. We should criticize it. And if it survives that examination, we should build upon it. So virtue gives Origin its ethical foundation. Virtue asks, what is good? But now we encounter a problem. You can't sincerely want to do good and still be completely wrong about what you're doing. Good intentions can produce terrible consequences. And that means virtue by itself isn't enough. We need another pillar. So let's talk about rationality. What do I mean by rationality? At the simplest level, rationality means trying to understand reality as it actually is, rather than merely as we would like it to be. Human beings possess an extraordinary capacity for doing this. We can observe, we can reason, we can compare explanations, we can test predictions, we can preserve discoveries and transmit them across generations. And perhaps most importantly, we can discover that we're wrong. That last part is perhaps the most essential, because rationality isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It isn't about winning arguments. Rationality requires intellectual humility. It requires being capable of saying, I believe this, the evidence no longer supports it, so I changed my mind. That's not weakness. That's rationality working correctly. Origin accepts science as our best available method for understanding physical reality, but rationality extends into ordinary life as well. We can ask ourselves, what do I actually know? What am I assuming? Where did this information come from? What evidence would change my mind? Am I accepting this because it's true or because I want it to be true? Important distinction. Origin also recognizes that complicated questions can sometimes be approached rationally from more than one perspective. Different people have different experiences, different information, different priorities. Two intelligent and sincere human beings can examine the same complicated problem and sometimes reach completely opposing conclusions. That's where an idea called pluralistic rationalism becomes important to Origin. Pluralism means we're willing to seriously examine different perspectives. But there's an important distinction here. Pluralism does not mean everything is equally true. Reality still constrains us. Evidence matters. Logic matters. Contradictions matter. Some ideas are simply wrong. The purpose of pluralism isn't to eliminate disagreement. It's to make disagreement useful. Maybe you see something I don't. Maybe I possess information you don't. Maybe the both of us are partly wrong. Rationality gives us a way of finding out. So rationality asks, what is true? Or perhaps more accurately, what do we currently have good reason to believe is true? But now we encounter another problem. Suppose I understand what is good. And suppose I have a reasonably accurate understanding of reality. I can still sit on the couch and do absolutely nothing. Knowing isn't doing. And that's why Origin needs the third pillar. Let's talk about intentionality. What does it mean to live intentionally? At its simplest, it means living deliberately. And I think this is something many of us struggle with. I know I do at times. It's incredibly easy to drift through life. You wake up, you check your phone, you go to work, you deal with whatever demands your attention, you come home, you consume something, you sleep. And then you do it again and again and again. And there's nothing inherently wrong with routine. The problem is that years can disappear inside routines we never consciously choose. Intentionality interrupts that pattern. It asks, what am I actually trying to do? What kind of person am I trying to become? What am I trying to learn? What am I trying to build? Which relationships am I trying to cultivate? Where am I going? And perhaps most importantly, do my choices actually reflect the things I claim matter to me? Intentionality doesn't mean having your entire life planned. In fact, one of Origin's starting assumptions is that you can't know exactly what is going to happen. Plans fail. Circumstances change. New information appears. Intentionality isn't rigid planning. It's deliberate direction. You can change the route without abandoning the destination. And sometimes you discover that the destination itself was wrong. Then you can change that too. That's where rationality comes back in. And this brings us to what I think is the most important part of understanding these three pillars. Why do we need all three? Why does Origin need virtue, rationality, and intentionality? Because each pillar corrects weaknesses in the others. Think about rationality without virtue. You could become extremely effective at accomplishing terrible things. Reason can help you determine how to achieve an objective, but reason alone doesn't guarantee that the objective is worth achieving. Now think about virtue without rationality. You genuinely want to help someone. Your motives are compassionate, but you completely misunderstand the situation. So everything you do makes the problem worse. Good motives don't automatically produce good consequences. And now imagine intentionality without virtue or rationality. You have a goal. You're determined. You wake up every morning and organize your life around that goal and achieving it. But the goal is destructive, or it's based on beliefs that simply aren't true. Determination doesn't make a bad direction good. So the three pillars aren't three independent ideas that happen to sit beside one another. They constrain and reinforce each other. Virtue asks, is this good? Rationality asks, is this grounded in reality? Intentionality asks, what am I actually choosing to do? And I think a sound decision should survive on all three merits. So how does this work in ordinary life? We have to put the three pillars into practice. Imagine you're confronted with an important decision. Maybe it's about your career. Maybe it's about a relationship. Maybe you're angry with someone. I know it happens to me a lot. Maybe you've encountered information that challenges something you strongly believe. Stop for a moment. Run the situation through the filter of the three pillars. First, what is actually true here? That is rationality. What do I know? What am I assuming? What evidence might I be ignoring? Then ask, what am I actually trying to accomplish? That's intentionality. Am I trying to solve the problem? Am I trying to protect my ego? Am I trying to help someone? Am I trying to hurt someone because I'm angry? What outcome am I actually pursuing? And then ask, what would a good person do in my situation? That is virtue. What does wisdom require? What would courage require? What would justice require? What would temperance require? You might still get the answer wrong. That's important. Origin doesn't promise certainty. It doesn't give us some magical formula that always produces the correct answer. What it gives us is a structure. Our response doesn't have to be arbitrary. And that's really the ultimate point of origin. Origin is a framework, not a rule book. Origin isn't supposed to provide a rule for every situation you will ever encounter. I don't even think that's possible. Life is way too complicated. Context matters. New situations emerge, and reasonable people sometimes disagree. What origin can provide is a framework, something you can carry into situations that nobody anticipated. Virtue gives us moral direction. Rationality keeps us connected to reality. Intentionality turns understanding into deliberate living. Together, these three ideas form the foundation of origin. But principles aren't enough. Eventually, principles have to become behavior. Human beings interact with the world through three very basic domains. We think, we speak, and then we act. I call these the three practices. And that's what I want to explore in the next video. How do we take virtue, rationality, and intentionality and actually practice them in everyday life? Because ultimately, I'm less interested in whether someone says they believe in origin than whether these ideas help them live better. So until next time, consider three questions. What is true? What is good? And what are you going to do about it? Thank you for watching. If you found something valuable in this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps other people who are interested in origin find these ideas. And if this made you think of someone who might find it valuable too, share it with them. Origin is something we're going to continue exploring, questioning, and developing together. Until next time, think rationally, speak intentionally, act virtuously.